John Cena is still going to move T-shirts. He's still going to be popular. He's still going to be their top draw on house shows, even if he loses to Brock Lesnar twice.
Well, and I don't even know why they're having this match. Okay, Cena gets his automatic rematch. They should have blown that off on a Raw. Here's my problem with redoing this match this week. First of all, I don't see any way they give Cena back his win. I just don't see it happening.
Well,
Secondly,
I hope you're right. Go on.
But secondly, the way he beat him last time, and then we had this brawl on Monday night. Okay, what is our old adage? Win on Monday, lose on Sunday, right?
Yes.
Well, Cena got the better of that brawl on Monday. I mean, he ate a German suplex, and then he came up swinging. He broke Brock Lesnar's nose, like legitimately broke his nose.
That's being disputed whether or not his nose was actually broken, but go on.
Well, whether it was broken or not, he took a shot from him. So, okay, so Cena gets the better of the brawl in the end, and he's standing tall with his little, his new little hand signals, whatever he does now. So, great. That means he's going to get squashed again on Sunday, right? But here's this is the problem with this match on Sunday. There is no good outcome. Because if Brock Lesnar wins again, it's like, okay, so what? We knew that was going to happen. Why did you even do the match if you weren't even going to put any suspense to it? And then if Cena wins, oh my God, the internet wrestling community is going to explode.
I think a lot of things will explode, not just the IWC that is mythically banded about, especially when wrestlers or wrestling people that are in the business get upset. They always like to collectively lump us together. Oh, the IWC hates it. So that's why I kind of even don't want to use that term anymore. But if the IWC is quote unquote going to explode over it, well, so are the casual average wrestling fans who've been fed this idea that Brock Lesnar is this gigantic monster who destroyed The Undertaker, who mercilessly massacred Cena, and in fact actually did so twice now, but the first time they're excusing as Cena getting a fluke win on him because he had diverticulitis. So we've already seen Lesnar destroy Cena twice, one time with the win, one time just leaving him in a heap, even though he actually lost. So...
So that goes back to his UFC days when he, the first time he fought Frank Mir, he beat Frank Mir into hamburger meat and then got caught in the knee bar.
Exactly. That's the old Lesnar excuse. Sometimes a fluke happens and you can beat Brock Lesnar, but they've tried to protect this idea of him as this mythical beast. They even refer to him as the Beast Incarnate. So, if you're going to slay the beast, it's got to be important. The Night of Champions pay-per-view is not important. They have done nothing to make this pay-per-view important. Nobody who doesn't already have the WWE Network is going out of their way to see this. Nobody is going, by God, it's the rematch of the century. I have to go to a sports bar. I have to find a friend who's ordering it. We have to have a party. Nobody gives that much of a shit. So,
brother, those days ended 12 years ago.
Well, maybe they did, but even so, amongst the new lower level of excitement for a pay-per-view, it's not even existing at that level. So, if you're going to do this, if you're going to have somebody slay the Beast Incarnate, whether it's John Cena, Roman Reigns, or whoever the hell else they want, it's got to mean more than this. And Night of Champions means nothing.
No, it means less than nothing. And okay, so every once in a while you're going to have a dud of a pay-per-view. I have a problem with one of those duds being Night of Champions.
The name
that name
itself,
just sounds important, doesn't it?
Yeah, the name implies that. I mean, imagine if this was a WCW pay-per-view and it was the Night of Champions. You would be seeing like Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, the Giant, Scott Hall. Everybody important would be in an important Sting. Yes, in an important match. They would all mean something because they would all be. It would be the Night of Champions.
Right, and instead, this is like a half-baked episode of SmackDown.
Yeah, if it's even that. I mean, okay, why don't we just, if we're done burying Raw, why don't we just go through this actual card and see what we can even care about? What do you say, Frank?
All right.
This is no way to be interpreted as a slam on Mark Henry because I've been a big advocate of him on this show for a long time. I've said many times that he is underutilized in WWE, but how the hell did we get a segment for the final, the last Raw before a pay-per-view where the main event was Mark Henry rallying America. What?
Well, I have several problems with this. Now, first of all, I echo your sentiment that Mark Henry shouldn't be unnecessarily trashed here. I could even argue that last year he had one of the top 3 moments of the year. Was it last year when he came out in a suit and announced he was retiring?
Yeah, when he wore the pink suit and
Right.
and said, "You think it's that easy?" and gave John Cena the world's strongest slam.
And then ripped his suit off and said, "Really, you thought I was going to retire?" And then he went into a world title program with Cena after that.
Yeah, which
so
only
I
thing
thought
better
that was a
it would
great
have been
moment.
if he'd actually won the world title.
I thought he should have, to be honest with you. I really thought he should have after that moment. I mean, it's one of those deals where I think it's like, okay, we need to give Cena something to do for a couple of months. Let's give him Mark Henry. And you send him out there thinking, we'll let him do the job over a couple months and then we'll move on to something else with Cena. But when he went out there and absolutely nailed that moment and made it just like one of those holy crap moments, they should have gone ahead and put the title on him at that point.
The fan response to it, the whole, he was crying just minutes before that happened, and it sucked in the whole audience, this kid from Salisbury, Texas, done proud, everybody was buying it right up until that moment where he gave Cena the slam. The fact that he sucked us all into that and made us feel something and then screwed us right at the end, that should have been a monumental step forward. But I think there's also, this is outside of whether we think Mark Henry is an A-plus player or not, to use a Triple H term here, but it's whether or not WWE is ever going to invest in him to anything beyond the ECW world title, or maybe he had a cup of coffee with the big gold belt. I can't remember at this point.
Yeah, he did. He did.
All right, so we all agree, right, that the big title is the one John Cena carries around. That's the one that's like their main title. Well, it's now the unified world title, but before that, it was the big title, correct?
Yeah.
So
well, and when Triple H was carrying the big gold belt around in the middle of the last decade, that was the big title in the company.
Okay, well, yeah, I guess it's whoever is holding it. If it's Triple H or Triple H's anointed one, that's the A-plus title. So,
right.
A-plus player, A-plus title, whatever. We'll just throw those terms out there. Anyway, they've got this mentality now that it is whatever we called John Cena's title before. The unified world title is the big title. So only the big player is going to hold the big title. And Mark Henry, as much as you and I both like him and enjoy his promos and like his work, gets injured a lot. This is a known fact. He has back problems. He has knee problems. They're not going to trust the A-plus title on somebody they think is going to be like Daniel Bryan and be on the shelf for a while.
Well, and there's another reason why Daniel Bryan factors into the decision not to really anoint Mark Henry. And that is because we've been recalibrated to look for wrestlers like Daniel Bryan and CM Punk. The sexy wrestlers these days are the smaller, faster, more technically sound, high-flying types. And, that's why you're not going to see Big Show carrying the belt anymore. You're not going to see Mark Henry carrying the belt anymore. They're not going to put it on. The super heavyweights are kind of out of vogue right now, aren't they?
Yeah, well, when Great Khali can't get anything more than a roll backstage guarding a door, that pretty much tells you everything you need to know.
Well, that's because Great Khali can barely stand anymore. So, I mean,
yeah,
that was a great role for him, by the way, and I thought he sold it well. I thought he did a pretty good job. When Heyman came out the door and he just grabbed him by the back of the neck and he goes, "Oh, now he's touching me."
You know what? That's probably, you're right. I think that's one of the lone highlights of Raw this week was watching Khali play security guard and John Cena explaining what he wanted to him in Great Khali's.
Listen, when they turned him into the Punjabi Playboy, I knew that Khali was basically the next Santino Marella. Okay, he's there for comedic effect now. They gave him a run with the world title back a few years ago, because he's big and he was a movie star at the time, and so they were using that for whatever. But the super heavyweights right now are not in vogue, it seems, and that brings me to Rusev. I mean, you brought up this whole segment that he and Mark Henry had at the end of the show. Here, I have a couple of problems with the way it went down, and neither of them do I blame on Mark Henry, really.
All right, let's hear it.
First of all, I'm going to say this, and I may get jumped on in emails, I don't know. But I'm just going to go out on a limb here and guess that nobody really cares about Rusev.
They've tried. They actually made people care about Jack Swagger, but I don't know if that was just that they hated Rusev or what am I trying to say here? I don't know that anybody got over out of the feud with Rusev, but it wasn't Rusev. If anybody, it was Swagger.
Yeah, and the reason I say nobody cares about Rusev is because he's not even the one who's selling his own angle. It's Lana. She comes out, she cuts these angry promos, she puts Vladimir Putin's name up there on the screen. If Rusev were just coming out and doing a Vladimir Kozlov and coming out to no music and headbutting people and then pinning them, they would care as much about him as they did about Vladimir Kozlov when he was playing the Russian angle 5-6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's Rusev out there, and Lana's the one selling the entire angle, doing her best, Russian impression of Paul Heyman. But I got thinking about this morning. Back in the 80s, this was a common thing because we were still in the middle of the Cold War with the Soviet Union. So you had Nikolai Volkov coming out and singing the Russian national anthem, and you had, you had all that going on. Crusher, Khrushchev. So there's your Barry Darsow shout out. But, you had all that going on, and it always ended the same way. These guys would come out there, they would run through about half the roster, and then they would run into the big guy. Whoever the big guy in their respective companies were, and they would lose because that's the only way that can end. Right now, Rusev is on this unending winning streak, and they ran Jack Swagger out there, a former world champion. Swagger actually did a hell of a lot better in that feud than I think even Vince intended for him to. I think it kind of pissed Vince off how well Swagger was received in that whole thing.
Yeah, I think so too, actually.
Because it's like, we sent you out there to just job to this guy, to get him, you're a former world champion, and we should have never put the belt on you, but because we did, now we're going to give him credibility for beating you. But then Swagger went out there, and the crowd just absolutely ate him up.
I think Zeb Coulter deserves some credit for that, because he's so charismatic when he's cutting those promos that people were responding to him, and it was transferring to Swagger.
Right, just like everything Lana's doing is transferring to Rusev, but it's starting to get old.
Mm-hmm. Well,
it really is. And how does this end? I mean, Mark Henry can't go over in this feud.
No, it's likely another big win for Rusev, if we can even use big in this context. But I have another theory for you.
Here we go.
This is the day of theories.
We should get some drop music for the big theories.
The Big Bang Theory. Well, here's the explosion. Cena's next feud is with Rusev. That doesn't mean he wins or loses the title in the match with Brock Lesnar. It just means that's who he's programmed with.
Well, Cena's going to go over, right?
Well, he's going to go over Rusev, but I don't know if he's going over Lesnar.
No, he won't go over Lesnar. He can't go over Lesnar. But he will go over Rusev. And once Rusev loses, especially to Cena, that's it for him.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I'm going to bring up an example, and you can disagree if you want, but somebody else has been in a tailspin since losing to Cena. And that other somebody is Bray Wyatt.
Tailspin may be putting it too far. I would say he's been shuffled down to the mid-card, but he's not completely out of luck. He's still in programs with guys like Chris Jericho and still a factor on TV every week. He's not totally irrelevant, but he's at a lower position now than he was before.
Well, guys like Chris Jericho, though, when you say that, it's at this point, listen, and I'm not knocking Chris Jericho. I'm a big fan of Chris Jericho going back to his days in WCW. The problem with Jericho these days is when he shows up, he's there to do the job. You just know that he is. When's the last time he went over in a feud? I'm not talking about winning a match, because he did beat Bray Wyatt the first match they had. But when's the last time he went over in a feud?
Probably
2007?
Yeah, the last time he was a world champion, when he was feuding with Shawn Michaels.
So you're talking 07, 08. You're talking 6-7 years ago is the last time he went over in a feud.
Yeah.
So, I mean, okay, so Bray Wyatt, beat Chris Jericho 2 out of 3 matches. Okay, who hasn't?
Hard to argue with you, Frank. You speak
For
truth.
A guy who is a sure Hall of Famer, a 6-time world champion, first ever undisputed champion, I mean, this guy has credentials that almost nobody else in the company has, and yet he's a jobber.
Well, at least if he is a jobber, it's like what you said before about Jack Swagger, except better. You remember you stated that they gave Jack Swagger a world title run, which they may or may not regret, but at least they have the credibility of him being a former world champion. Well, Jericho is a multiple-time former world champion, so at least if they're going to job him, they've got some credibility with jobbing him.
Well, and Chris Jericho is not only a former world champion, he can lay claim to something very few people can. He's a pioneer in this business.
That's true.
I mean, he actually, there are marked changes in the business over the last 15, 18 years that can be directly attributed to Chris Jericho.
Yeah.
So, no Chris Jericho, and the business is a different place today. Both in the way promos are cut, and some of the skits and segments that get run. I mean, Chris Jericho has left his fingerprints on this business that will always be there.
Amen.
Jack Swagger, you can't really say that about.
Not Jack Swagger at this present time, but I won't rule out anything in the future. I would say odds are probably not high, but there's always that chance that Jack Swagger could be that guy 15 or 20 years ago that we talked about. Wow, what a run he had back then.
Yeah, I mean, I think he'll have a run again at some point, it's particularly if he keeps impressing like he has been. I don't know if this current feud he's in is really going to get the job done, but
no.
I mean, what are you going to do about that?
Well, I suppose I don't even know what we can do about that because he's not even on this pay-per-view, so it's not helping him right now. Whatever it is, but then nobody on this pay-per-view is going to be benefiting from it anyway, so maybe he's better not being on it.
Well, here's the thing. I think what should have happened, and again, I mean, hindsight being 20/20, what should have happened was in his feud with Rusev, he should have at least taken a match. That would have solved a couple of problems. One, it would have sustained his come up, okay? Because clearly he has come up from where he was, and it would have sustained that. You can still give Rusev the feud, okay? You can give him the war, but at least let Jack Swagger win a battle. And that also solves the problem of Rusev just being undefeated for the sake of being undefeated right now. It has not helped his character at all. If anything, people are starting to get bored with him because it's every time you book him in a match, it's like, well, we know he's going to win, so why the hell are we even watching this? But if he had dropped one match to Swagger, and it could have been, I mean, it could have been through, whatever. Maybe he blew, I don't know how you do it, but if he had dropped just one match to Swagger, then when he eventually came back and avenged that loss and crushed Swagger, it would have made him look that much stronger. This guy can beat you, and you still overcame him.
Right. Yeah, just one time, if we could have seen Rusev tap out to the Patriot Lock, then when he comes back and he destroys Swagger the second time, you're like, okay, that's definitive. It goes back to the whole Frank Mir Brock Lesnar thing. Like, okay, he got caught once, but he didn't get caught again.
Right. He learned from his mistake. And I'm going to tell you something. His undefeated record right now, which isn't really technically an undefeated record when you look at it, it's technically an unpinned, unsubmitted record. Because he did lose this past week by disqualification. He was in a battle royal earlier this year that he did not win, which is technically a loss. Okay, so I mean, he has lost matches, but he's never been pinned or submitted.
Right. They've protected him. They've made sure that we haven't seen him visually be pinned.
Right. So for that sake, that's doing him more harm than good right now, because right now he's in a booking corner. I call it the Umaga problem.
You build up a beast.
They let Umaga go undefeated for so long that it was like, what the hell? How do we get out of this? Like, he's got to lose a match, but how do we even do that at this point?
Well, they figured out the way with Umaga. They had Jeff Hardy feud with him because Jeff Hardy was so popular that it transferred. It made sense for him to lose to Jeff because everybody loved him. But
then it killed Umaga's push.
That's true.
You let a guy go undefeated for so long that when he finally does lose a match, people stop caring. And that's why you don't do that. I mean, they did the same thing to Ryback. Now, listen, Ryback's not a great technical wrestler, but he is a big powerhouse, and I mean, he's got some marketing appeal in that regard. Just don't give him a microphone. But at least with Ryback, they had the opportunity to at least push him a little bit, and they made him undefeated for so long. He was crushing all these jobbers 2 and 3 at a time. And then when he finally lost a match, everybody was just like, okay, nothing more to see here.
Mm-hmm. And then he got a second chance at the world title, and he lost that. And then he got a third chance, and he lost that.
And now where is he?
And now he's making random tweets and deleting them.
Right. So he's not even on TV. And I can't remember the last time I saw. I think he's injured right now. But
yeah, he had hernia surgery.
Wasn't he sort of hanging out on Superstars and NXT anyway before that?
Yeah, he's been in Nowheresville.
Right. So with Rusev, they should have let him lose a match to Swagger and then got it back. And then at this point, it's like, well, now when Mark Henry comes out here, he might very well lose. And then when he doesn't, you go, okay, well, at least it was worth seeing whether he would lose or not. But right now, there's no reason to believe that he will.
Yeah, it's dead. You're right.
And that's the problem with the whole card. Every match, I look at every match, and you and I have had a pretty good success rate at predicting matches over the last 10, 12 years. But right now, there's no predicting. There's just, I know how every one of these matches is going to end.
All right, well, let's backtrack a little then. I think we both decided Reigns and Rollins was going to end in a no contest or some sort of squash, schmoz finish, right?
Yeah, it's going to be some screwy thing.
Right, and Jericho and Orton, since we've already brought up Jericho's name, I'd have to predict Orton winning since Jericho's going to leave to go on tour with his band again.
And once again, here they have an opportunity that they're not going to take. I would let Jericho leave with the win. And for two reasons. One, because it's completely unexpected. Everybody's looking at his tour schedule and going, well, there's no way he's winning this match. But then two, what if this is his last match ever? And it could very well be. I mean, one thing we tend to ignore here is that Jericho's, 41 years old?
He's in his 40s.
He's in his 40s. He's never going to have a world title run again. He's gotten a whole lot more interested in the rest of his life over the last few years than he is in wrestling anymore. He only comes in to help put other guys over. He put Bray Wyatt over. His job here is done. The only reason I think he's wrestling Randy Orton one last time is because he had an unfulfilled date on his schedule, and it didn't make sense to do yet another match with Bray Wyatt. So this is just a filler match for everybody involved. And Orton's still going to be around after Jericho leaves, so this isn't going to hurt him much. Let Jericho win the match.
Yeah, well, I've made that argument on many occasions, not just with Jericho, but with anybody they bring in for a short, limited run. Like, why does it matter if he goes out with a win? Because the guy that loses can get his heat back after the guy leaving is gone.
Yeah, and the only exception to that would be The Rock's last run. I mean, he had the title, he had to drop it.
Of course. I totally agree with you there.
But with Jericho, I mean, what the hell? Let him win the match. Who cares? Orton's at a place in his career where winning or losing does nothing for him.
There's absolutely nothing you said that I disagree with, but I know WWE and I know how they think. Orton's winning.
Of course, and you know what, Jericho at this point is just showing up and going, all right, here's my W-4. he's there for the paycheck.
Well, I'm sure he'd have liked to, in ideal circumstances, he'd like to have a memorable match. It's like second on the card, on a very long card with a lot of matches, but if people will at least say, man, Jericho and Orton had one of the best matches that night, then that might be all he really wants.
Well, and Jericho's at a point now where maybe it's just me, but he looks a little more doughy than he did the last time he came through. So he's lost a step. He's not Jericho from even 8 years ago, let alone 12 years ago.
Well,
but he can still put on a better match than half the roster. Okay?
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes I think you actually get better when you get a little older and you get a little injured and you learn how to work smarter instead of harder. I think Jericho can do a better match with a step slower than most people can half his age.
I will say this, though. That dude is still carrying a pair of basketballs between his legs. I mean, that crossbody off the top of the cage last week.
Yeah.
For a 40-something-year-old dude, wow.
And you know what? Glad you brought that up, Frank, because that really pissed me off later when we saw a second move off the cage. I'm like, that should have been...
Seth Rollins.
Yeah, that should have been the spot of the night. Jericho should have owned that, and then they took that away from him and made it unimportant by having somebody else do it on the same show.
Yeah, and I got to imagine Jericho was probably backstage watching this going, are you kidding me?
If I was him, I would have been pissed. He's probably too much of a professional to throw a fit about that kind of thing, at least at his current age and current, where he
Yeah.
is in life. But maybe 15 years ago, if somebody had done that, Jericho would have, put you in a headlock and taken you to the ground and choked you out. But
Yeah, he would have Bill Goldberg you.
yeah, but unfortunately, he's now too mature for that, which is a shame because he really should have pitched a bitch about that one.
Well, and you know what? I don't just miss Chris Jericho from back then. I miss that kind of wrestler. I miss the kind of wrestler that isn't afraid to stand up and go, look, damn it. Because that just doesn't happen anymore. I mean, what we have now is the Stepford wrestlers. I mean, they get their orders and they go out there and they execute, even if it's stupid, even if it doesn't make sense. And that's why we don't get any originality in our products anymore. I mean, we're recycling the Cold War right now with Rusev. We're recycling, broken up groups with the Shield right now, like we saw with the Four Horsemen back in the 90s. There are no new ideas left, I guess.
I'm going to completely segue away from Night of Champions by saying this, but you know why it's so fun to watch old stuff on the WWE Network?
Why is that?
Because you can tell that guys were not given scripted promos. Even if they deliver a line terribly and botch it and have to start all over again and make their point in a different way, at least they're doing it themselves and coming up with their own words and their own ideas and getting their own emotions involved. And I love it. You can tell that I'm not saying that wrestling has to be this way or that it's better in the old days, because I don't want to be one of those people that sits in his rocking chair and goes, man, I remember back in my day when... No, but I'm saying it's fun because everything feels off the cuff and fresh, that they're coming up with their shit as they do it.
And that was both the blessing and the curse of WCW. It was so loosely scripted to the point of almost not being scripted at all that you got more organic moments. You got more honest, authentic moments. Now, in the end, it ended up killing that business because it was so loosely run that, people were just out there, making their own pushes and booking their own matches and booking their own outcomes. And either Hulk Hogan or Kevin Nash was champion for 8 years.
I was waiting for you to mention Kevin Nash. I knew his name would come up here.
Yeah, so, that was both the blessing and the curse of that business. A perfect scenario would be where somebody's tightly running the business, but taking the leash off when it comes to the promos. And listen, there are only certain people you can trust to do that. I'm not sending Ryback out there with a microphone and carte blanche. I'm not sending. I wouldn't even send Mark Henry out there with just carte blanche. Okay, but guys like Cena, who can just go out there and sell a program without you telling him what to say. CM Punk, The Rock. There are some people that you just don't tell them what to say. You just say, go do your thing, and they're going to sell the match.
I count Jericho among those. When Jericho starts talking, he can say whatever he wants, and I'm listening.
And you know what? That's the thing about Jericho. That's how Jericho became the Jericho we know today. Because, and he talks about this in one of his autobiographies. He talks about how, WCW was so loosely scripted that they would give me 5 minutes, and I would just go out there and just do whatever I could to get noticed. They didn't tell me what to say. I just went out there and did it. And he talked about working long, hard hours in what he called the box, practicing his promos. And although he is a world-class, fantastic wrestler, probably one of the top 5 or 10 of all time in terms of technical ability, it was his promos that got him over.
And his segments, too. The wacky stuff he was doing with people like Ralphus, it made you notice Jericho.
Yeah, and what was the segment probably that put him on the map? It was the Man of 1,004 Holds.
We played that promo so many times on this show that I can't even bust it out again now. But
bar.
Yeah, just reading the list. Well, that and the night that he interrupted The Rock when he came over to WWF.
Yes.
Those two moments.
Yes, and you know what? The Rock spoke for 45 seconds. He delivered all of his usual catchphrases, but that was still one of those moments that you look at this and go, wow, that was special.
Indeed. And just like we talked about last year with Mark Henry giving that retirement speech and then screwing John Cena, things that stand out, and there are too few and too far between anymore, where you just have that holy shit moment, just sticks in your mind that years later, when we look at a whole year of wrestling, that one thing stands out. And
see, and that's what makes us so sad now is these things almost happen on accident anymore. Mm-hmm. Jack Swagger accidentally got over against Rusev, Mark Henry accidentally created an iconic moment with that fake retirement speech. I mean, anymore, it's like they so overscript these things and so overbook them, and they don't really think fourth dimensionally about their booking to the point where now when we get a moment like that, it's almost accidental.
Or when they try to create a moment,
Right.
it backfires horribly. Like they did the whole Goldust and Stardust turning heel thing,
Ugh.
and yeah, exactly. Ugh. They crippled Jey Uso. They kicked the leg out of his leg. Do I care? I didn't care about the Usos, and now that the Dust Brothers have turned heel, I don't care about them either.
I cared about the Usos when they were feuding with the Wyatt family because those are some of the more fantastic matches I've seen since Shawn Michaels retired and Chris Jericho became a rock star.
That's true. Those two tag teams were having great matches, and seeing the Usos fly through the air and knock one of the big Wyatts down to the ground on the outside was fun. It was the kind of wrestling you could just sit back with a bag of popcorn and a soda and go, man, this is good stuff.
Well, that's the stuff we watched in the 80s and early 90s. I mean, that was, there, and listen, there weren't a lot of promos being cut between those two teams because Bray Wyatt's the promo machine for the Wyatt family, not Harper and Rowan. They're not out there talking, they're out there wrestling. And the Usos, I don't want them on a microphone either.
No,
So,
the whole
but they
"when
went
I
out there
say
and just
ooh,
tore the
y'all
house
say
down.
so" is one of the worst catchphrases ever.
Well, and their little entrance where they do their tribal dance or whatever seems long and unnecessary.
Yeah,
You
like
know,
you could just give them a Titantron and let some pyro go off when they come out, and just let it be done. That they have to dance and chant and stomp, and then do the call and response with the crowd. After that, it's overkill.
but see, I'm a big fan of tag team wrestling, and they're on the verge right now of just killing that division.
Well, it's funny we're talking about that because there's one of the matches that we haven't even discussed yet on this card, and coincidentally, it's the Usos against Golden Stardust.
The Usos run is going to end sooner or later, and I think it ends this week.
Yeah, well, I guess that would be the one reason they turned these two heel was that you have to have heels beat the faces.
Yeah, and the Usos, they've held the titles for longer than I thought they would. Honest to God, I thought they were going to drop them to the Wyatt family.
Well, let's see. How long is that reign? I'm trying to find a list of the tag team champions and their length of their reigns.
Did they win the title at WrestleMania? I don't remember. Does it go back that far?
I'm looking it up right now. They won at a Raw in Rosemont, Illinois this March, so it was before Mania.
Okay.
So yeah, dating back to March 3rd, that's how long their current run has been. 199 days and counting as of this taping.
So they've had them for over 6 months.
Yep, it's about time for them to take the titles off. And now isn't that a sad statement in and of itself that we can automatically decide when somebody's going to lose a title just by how long they've held it? Again, that's how we know WWE. That's what we've learned from them.
The only exception in the last quarter century being CM Punk.
Yeah, well, that may be another kettle of fish for another day. So.
Yeah, I don't even want to talk about him today.
All right, so we're both in agreement then so far on this card. Reigns and Rollins ends in a schmoz. Jericho and Orton goes over. The Usos lose to Golden Stardust, and Mark Henry loses to Rusev.
Yeah.
All right, well, that only leaves 4 matches on this abysmal pay-per-view card, and doesn't get more abysmal than a 3-way with Nikki Bella involved, because no matter how good the other two are, there's still Nikki Bella.
Yes. And Paige is going to retain.
I hope so. God bless. If they do anything else, it's really dumb at this point because they can't keep having Paige and AJ trade the title back, and putting it on Nikki would be even worse.
The only argument for that would be selling the Divas, the Total Divas TV show, but I don't think it needs a championship. I just don't. I did see something interesting though. Somebody said, you know what? Let's give the Divas title to Nikki Bella or Brie Bella or one of the divas that's on that reality show, and let's bring back the women's title for the real wrestlers.
Not the worst idea I've heard this week. If you could have Trish Stratus come out and have a segment on Raw saying, I was the last real women's champion, I brought the belt with me, and since the other belt's on Total Divas now, I'm giving it to you, whoever the GM is for the day, and you can crown a new champion tonight.
Right, and as a matter of fact, she retired with the title, so that would make total sense.
Yeah, I book it, steal our idea, take it. You don't even have to give me credit. Just do it. I'll say I want it done just because I want to see Trish on TV. I ain't gonna lie about that.
No, that would be an incredible moment. And then you can have Paige. You could even have like a fatal four-way. You could put Paige, AJ, Natalya, and pick one other wrestler in there
Summer
Rae, because you know it's going to be either Paige or AJ anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Now, having said that, they are going to need to craft an exit strategy for this Paige AJ rivalry. That can't go on for 6 more months.
I have another theory for you.
Okay.
The new idea is that they're not going to be feuding because they hate each other. They're going to be feuding because they are attracted to each other.
No.
Yes, apparently sexual tension is the order of the day, but they have to do it in a very subtle way so as to not piss off their sponsors.
Okay, that's interesting. It's been done before. We had that with Mickie James and Trish Stratus.
Yes.
Well, there wasn't a mutual attraction. There was a one-sided attraction. It was the stalker angle.
Right, but in this angle, it's supposed to be specifically that they like each other and not just one way.
Okay, but then you would need an exit strategy for that. Mm-hmm. There has to be a payoff to that, and I'm afraid of what that might be.
Maybe the payoff is bringing back Eric Bischoff for a 3-minute warning. Well, no, we can't do that. Umaga's gone.
Right. But that would be interesting. It would certainly, there'd be a star partners with Glad, so that would certainly go over in that realm. But I don't know how you would do that in a way that would have an obvious payoff. And that's the problem with Paige and AJ is they've been at it for so long now that it's like somebody else has to get into this mix sooner or later. And it can't be Nikki Bella. Now, I do agree with the conventional wisdom that her involvement in this match is simply to get her screwed out of winning the title by her sister.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Brie interferes, yes.
Now, I've heard a theory, that Brie is going to help her win the title.
Oh, man, that would be, okay. The Bella's angle is already dumb as shit to begin with. If they do that, I don't know if that's my fold up the tent and go home moment like you had earlier, but that would be pretty damn close. That if we get all these stupid angles they've done on TV for the last 2 months only for Brie to help her, oh man, that's just death.
The only credit I would give that would be the long con. If this whole thing was a setup from the start, you know what I mean? That these two agreed to do this a long time ago so that she could help her win the title.
But then you're making an idiot out of every single person who's been involved in their angle, including Triple H and Stephanie McMahon. Are you really going to make them look like dunces?
Well, there has to be an exit strategy for this authority angle at some point, too. I mean, sooner or later, somebody's got to make them look stupid. I doubt Nikki and Brie Bella are the ones that I would use to pull that trigger, though.
If Brie's involved in it in any way, it would be Brie and Daniel Bryan. They would be the ones to give them their comeuppance.
Now, see, you just made my heart jump, because that would be brilliant, and that's why it's not going to happen. But that would be brilliant. That this whole thing would really be a setup for Daniel Bryan, because he, they even cut a promo on him after he left to go have his surgeries. I told you he wasn't an A+ player. I warned you about this, and now he's injured, and blah 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 blah. We gave him a shot. He won the title, and now here he is injured. We warned you about that. And for him to get even by using Brie, that would actually be brilliant, which again is why it's not going to happen.
No, not when they can't come up with a script for Raw more than 30 minutes before the show takes place.
And not only that, but we don't even know when Daniel Bryan's coming. I've heard speculation that he'll be back at Survivor Series, but we don't know that.
Yeah, it's up in the air. Apparently the arm strength is returning, but whether it returns fast enough for that, I don't know.
That's 2 months, folks. I'm not looking for that.
No, I would be happy if he just came out at the Royal Rumble number 30 or number 1. Either way, I could live with that. Yeah,
I'm okay with not seeing him until January. I'm with you there.
All right, so we've got 3 more matches. We got to get through them. Dolph Ziggler and The Miz in the feud that I hate the most out of anything on television right now. Can everybody involved in this feud go away and never be seen again?
I don't want to never see Dolph Ziggler again. I'm okay with never seeing The Miz again. I'm okay with never seeing Damien Sandow again. And at this point, I'm okay with never seeing R-Truth again.
I'm okay with seeing R-Truth again, just not in those trunks.
But, Dolph Ziggler is the only keeper out of that whole group, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and this I'm sorry, after 3 straight shows with them in tag team matches with their stunt doubles, enough is too much.
I will say this, though. If you're going to keep that going, okay, fine. Here's an idea. Put them in the tag team division.
All right, well then why are we using them to get over the singles match for the Intercontinental title if they're going to be in the tag teams?
Get the title off Dolph Ziggler. You can put it on the Miz momentarily. Damien Sandow's probably going to be released sometime in the next year anyway.
Oh man, that's a tremendous waste if that happens.
It is, but what other possible outcome is there for him at this point? They have so severely depushed him that he's pulling the Jericho in his last days in WCW right now. He's out there just doing anything he can to get noticed.
Is it sad that this guy once held a Money in the Bank briefcase? Yeah,
it is. And where did that take him? Well, it took him to where he is now. So, in fact, that Money in the Bank briefcase so severely devalued Damien Sandow, but then conversely, he also severely devalued that briefcase. That whole run didn't do a favor for either him or that briefcase.
Except the one thing I can take away from that is he had the best looking Money in the Bank briefcase I've ever seen.
Yes, he did. Yes, he most certainly did. He sold the angle as long as they let him have it.
I know. That's why I think that Damien Sandow has been horribly misused, because even though he's playing a completely stupid role and I hate it, he is still absolutely going out there and selling 110% of being the stunt double. This guy will take any crap they give him and he'll do it to death.
Well, and you know why, don't you? Because it's the only way he can hold on to his job. If he goes out there pissed off that they're doing this with him and he just phones it in, and that's, I have a theory that's why Vince gives people stupid angles like this. Because if you go out there all mad about it and you act like you're mad about it while you're out there doing it, that's your death sentence. Mm-hmm. He gives them these angles to see if he can get them to go away on their own.
Oh yeah, he's constantly testing people. The fact that he has Heath Slater doing the stuff that Slater does, it's like, we'll see if we can piss you off enough to make you go Zack Ryder and just mouth off all the time, and then we'll never use you on TV again once you do.
Right, but incidentally, Zack Ryder still has a job, so...
Yeah, but it's to get squashed once every 2 or 3 months.
Right, and they even let him win a match on Raw a few weeks back.
Did they? I've forgotten that. What was the match that he won?
Oh, who was it that he beat? I don't remember who it was he beat, but they made a huge deal out of, oh my God, this is his first win on Raw in 5 years.
That must have been some incredible fluke. It must have been like he grabbed the trunks and rolled up Bo Dallas or something.
I don't remember who it was, to be honest with you, but, I don't think it was anybody important or, whatever, but...
Well, that's why I picked Bo Dallas, because he's not important.
Oh, God, no.
You know what? Somebody said there was going to be a pre-show match on this pay-per-view, and my prediction for it, since they haven't come up with one on their own, was Bo Dallas versus the Bunny from the Rosebuds.
And the Bunny would have to go over, right?
Yeah, the Bunny would double leg him, put him in a Boston Crab, and tap him out.
Now, here's the funny thing about this Bunny. Speculation has been that that's Zack Ryder inside the suit, but it's going to be revealed as Darren Young eventually.
Well, it's also been speculated that Sami Zayn is the one playing the Bunny, but he won't be the Bunny when the mask comes off. So, same thing. Could be Darren Young, could be anybody.
Right. The even money right now is on Darren Young being revealed as the Bunny when this whole thing is said and done.
Does that do him any favors?
No. It does not.
I didn't think so.
And I'm not saying this to be funny, okay? I'm saying this because I mean it. Putting Darren Young in a pink bunny suit is absolutely an atrocious idea.
You're not referring to the glad part of that.
Actually, I am, and I'm not referring to it as a derogatory statement toward Darren Young. I'm referring to this as, did Vince not think that through?
Did he not think how it would be perceived when the bunny came off? Yeah.
You've got your first openly gay wrestler in history, okay? And you're going to put him in a pink bunny suit. And where are people's minds going to go when it's revealed to be him?
For the longest time I've had a problem with this first openly gay wrestler anyway, because how has Pat Patterson not been openly gay? I know that he quote-unquote revealed it on the Legends House show, but how has he not been openly gay for like 30 years now?
Well, he's been openly, he's never made a secret of it, but he never said it. That was the thing. He didn't say it until a couple weeks ago.
Well, I consider it open if you don't say it, but you don't hide it either.
Right, but, it's like Alexander Graham Bell did not invent the telephone. He was just the first one in the door at the patent office.
Mm-hmm.
Darren Young did not invent being a gay wrestler. He was just the first one to stand up and go, yep, that's me.
All right.
So,
I'll accept your definition.
But I do have an issue with putting him in a pink bunny suit. Because it's going to look like Vince is making fun of him now.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm overthinking this. I don't know, but
I'm with you on this one. I would make it some mid-carder who we've completely forgotten about and not a guy where it could be perceived the wrong way. Make it somebody like a Zack Ryder. Have him be the bunny, and then you're like, oh my God, I remember him. He was the bunny all along, and then it would actually be kind of cool.
Yeah, and it needs to be somebody inconsequential because you're telling me you're using this pink bunny suit to push somebody to a world title eventually? Probably not.
You would need it to be a lower mid-card guy. You know what? I just hit on the idea, Frank. I just nailed it right now. And you know what? It's because of the news that came out today that a certain wrestler we thought was retiring due to his neck injuries has had a very successful surgery and thinks he can come back in a few months. And
Santino Marella.
Yes, we talked about comedy figures and guys that are only used for comedy earlier. That would be the guy. If you're going to have somebody be the bunny, have it be somebody that we already associate with being a goof.
Okay, that I can go with, and that would make total sense, because let's face it, ultimately what you're talking about is a member of Adam Rose's entourage. Mm-hmm. Now, the bunny can't be anybody that's going to get pushed to the moon, because Adam Rose is never going to be pushed to the moon.
Absolutely.
So, right now, the bunny is the most noticeable part of his whole thing. Does anybody really care that Adam Rose is wrestling? Is anybody buying this angle or this gimmick that he's pushing?
The only reason it ever even mattered, it was never him. It was always about the entourage, the people singing his theme song, and them throwing a big party. It's party time all the time. It's like it's Skip from Cartoon Network. He's just an overgrown cartoon character.
Right, and see, that brings me back to something we talked about early in this show, and that is nobody cares about Rusev, they care about Lana. When your accessory is more important than you are, and that was the problem I had with Ziggler being with Vicky Guerrero. Nobody cared about Ziggler when that was happening. Everybody cared to hear what Vicky had to say. Now, at least with Lesnar and Heyman, Lesnar is selling himself with these brutal beatdowns and the fact that he is a legit badass.
And they only have Heyman there because he can't be on TV every week, contractually.
Well, not only that, but Lesnar's not a promo machine. So okay, you have Heyman there to be his mouthpiece. That's fine. But Lesnar's going in the ring and speaking for himself with his actions.
Right.
But when you've got an Adam Rose who people care more about the pink bunny and his entourage than they do him, he's a loss.
You know what shocked the hell out of me? I watched an episode of Countdown on the network this week, and he was the one that was doing the little insets where he talked about why so-and-so was so great and so-and-so was so awesome. I'm like, they actually thought enough of Adam Rose to put him on a Countdown show?
Well, they thought so little of him that that's all they're putting him on.
I suppose you could look at that either way.
Right. So there's no good future for Adam Rose under this current gimmick.
No, there's not. But back to Ziggler and Miz. Ziggler retains?
No, I don't think so.
You really think they're gonna put it on the Miz even temporarily and then go to a tag team feud?
No, I said that's what should happen. I don't think that will happen though. Here's the thing about these two guys. You've got a couple of former world champions who are never going to be world champions again. The Miz for obvious reasons, Ziggler because they just don't trust him due to his injury history, right?
Right.
So you look at these two guys, you know they're never going to be at the top of the card again, but they're still very good wrestlers, and they both are very good wrestlers. But the question is, okay, well, what do we do with them then? And typical of Vince, give him a mid-card title. Because he doesn't care about the mid-card titles.
Certainly not the way he books the mid-card champions to lose all the time.
I mean, I don't think he cared about the Intercontinental title back when Tito Santana was carrying it. Mm-hmm. He just does not care about mid-card titles because they're not money to him.
Yeah.
They could be, but the way he does it, they're not.
No. To him, it's all about the heavyweight champion and the heavyweight title. That's all he sees.
Right, and these mid-card titles are just something for other people to do when he doesn't know what else to do with them.
Mm-hmm.
So he doesn't know what to do with Miz. He doesn't know what to do with Ziggler. Just give him the Intercontinental title to fight over, whatever. And by the way, just to segue myself, that's the same thing with the U.S. belt right now.
Oh, yeah, Sheamus and Cesaro, that was next on my list.
And folks, I keep going back and forth on what Vince is ever going to do with Cesaro. My feelings about him in WWE are well documented. They're not the feelings I have about him personally. I think the guy's a fantastic wrestler. I really do. But all my comments have always been pointed at where I think he's going to be in the grand scheme of the company. And the fact is, Vince does not believe in the guy. He just doesn't. Right when it seemed last year that he was about to make a liar out of me, he goes free falling down the card again.
Mm-hmm.
They even put him in the Elimination Chamber for the title. Right? And I'm thinking, oh shit, man, he's seriously about to turn me into a massive liar. But then it didn't happen. And now he's right back where he was when I was banging on his role in the company 2 years ago.
There's nothing Cesaro has done to explain why this happens, because when he does media appearances, he is the consummate professional. He is the John Cena of their European wrestlers. He'll go to any appearance. He'll say whatever they want. He'll do whatever they want. He's very personable. I knew the guy before he was in WWE, and he was already that way. And he's got the physique that Vince likes. He's big and he's strong and he's powerful and he can throw people around and look really good doing so, but he also protects the people he's working with. People don't get hurt working with him. So he's got everything they want and they still don't do anything with him. I will never understand it.
I want to go back over a list of names right quick, okay? And I want you to tell me the two things they have in common.
All right, go ahead.
William Regal, Mason Ryan, Wade Barrett, Sheamus, Claudio Castagnoli. What do these guys have in common?
They're all very big and strong, and they're all European.
Right. And with the exception of Sheamus, how many of those other guys have held world titles?
Well, Mason Ryan sure as shit didn't.
Nope. Neither did William Regal.
William Regal should have about a dozen times, but...
Right, but he didn't.
He did win King of the Ring, though. We can at least give him that.
Okay.
I got to come up with something. William Regal won King of the Ring. That's better than nothing.
Right, but King of the Ring is a whole other subject. That's not a guaranteed push.
I know. But anyway, you're right. So Wade Barrett, they've come close to pulling the trigger on him a couple of times, but unfortunately he keeps getting hurt.
When Wade Barrett won the Intercontinental title this year, I remember thinking, congratulations, you're right back where you were 4 years ago.
Yeah, like Nexus 2.0.
You've finally gotten back to the level you were at your first 6 months in the company. Congratulations.
I feel like Vince McMahon likes Wade Barrett, though. I get the impression from the way they book him that Vince actually sees something in him. But
he's not gonna. I mean, okay, yeah, he has had injuries. I get that. But my point is Vince does not seem particularly enamored of making money players out of his European wrestlers.
Other than Sheamus, I guess we just have to figure out why did he have a hard-on for Sheamus and not anybody else?
I don't know, but he doesn't have one for him now.
No, yeah, Sheamus is kind of in mid-card hell right now and has been for a while.
Sheamus won his first world title like his first 3 or 4 months in the company. Mm-hmm. Like when he won the WWE Championship, I remember going, "What? I'm only barely beginning to realize who this dude is."
Yeah,
and he's world champion right now?
It came out of nowhere. It was definitely unexpected, but in a good way, because we need that every now and then where somebody new just shoots right to the top and you never saw it coming.
But there is something to be said for pushing him too hard too fast, because he fell down the card after that. And then he gradually floated his way back up. But if you'll notice, you talked about the big money title. He hasn't carried that in a long time.
You're right.
His world title reigns were all with the big gold belt, which was, basically as valuable as the IC title is right now.
Yeah, I suppose so. Well,
so Sheamus hasn't been pushed significantly in years.
the one thing he's still got going for him, though, is that because he got that early run and got so hot so fast, he's developed a fan base. A lot of people still stick with him, even though he's in mid-card hell now.
And the reason he's in mid-card hell is because he's booked as a babyface.
Yeah, he's better as a heel. He always was. He always will be.
And if they ever decide to pull the trigger and turn him heel again, he will rip through. I think there's potential there for him to rip through the roster.
Yeah, you know what? If they are going to eventually put the title on either Cena or Reigns, I want Sheamus to be the guy that feuds with them.
Yeah, I just don't see it happening, though.
And I know I'm going to get people yelling at me and sending me the hate mail like you were talking about earlier. They're going to be like, really? You would program Cena and Sheamus again? Okay, I know we saw that before, but it's been so long since they've done it, I could actually get into it again.
If it's done right.
If it's done right.
So, what do we got left on the card?
Just Lesnar and Cena.
Okay. Like I said, there's no good outcome to this match. If Lesnar pounds a mud hole into Cena again, then, you know, the argument is, well, Cena's so big and he's the man in the company, he can take a loss, whatever. Yeah, okay, he can take a loss. But if Lesnar destroys him again, this never give up Cena thing, where do you go with that? You basically invalidate the character he's built over the last 10 years if you let him just take another royal ass kicking again, right?
The only thing I can see is that maybe they don't go with the royal ass kicking this time. They make it more like 60-40 or closer to 50-50 where Cena actually gets a few moments in on him, but still loses at the end. So at least the one upshot you could say is, well, he didn't win, but he did better.
Well, and that's the only feasible outcome here. In fact, I'll go you one better. I think Cena needs to dominate most of the match, only to get caught short at the end. Because then that makes, they have to walk a fine line here. Brock Lesnar, they have built him up as such a beast since he beat Undertaker at WrestleMania and he destroyed John Cena at the last pay-per-view. They've built him up as such an indestructible monster that now they have to dial that back. They have to make him look beatable, even if he doesn't lose.
Right. So
because somebody sooner or later has to beat him.
Right. Roman Reigns or whoever it is down the line, there has to be some vulnerability that you could believe he could be beaten.
Now, here's what I would like to see happen, and it's not gonna. I'd like to see a no decision. I would like to see these two dudes beat the living hell out of each other for 30 minutes. And in the end, nobody answers the bell.
Like they're both just laid out and it's a double count out or what?
Yeah, that's what I want to see happen. I want a brutal match. I want a brutal, bloody match. I'm just going to say that.
You know what? There's only one problem with that, Frank. If they go to a no decision or a double count out or a double disqualification or whatever, then you're automatically setting up for a third match because nothing's been decided.
And I think there should be a third match, but not immediately.
Well, how do you get away from them doing the third match immediately? Because they're already doing the rematch that we thought they should have waited to do.
Easily. Cena came out a couple weeks ago on Raw and said, I'm contractually guaranteed a rematch. Well, after this match, regardless of the outcome, he's no longer guaranteed a match.
Oh.
So from a booking standpoint, you can say you've had your rematch, and then you cycle some other people through Lesnar.
So you make the authority the bad guys. They screw Cena and say, sorry, buddy, you're not getting another chance.
Bingo. And I don't think Lesnar should carry the title all the way to WrestleMania. That's still 6 months from now. Wow. I don't think Lesnar should carry it all the way to WrestleMania. I think at some point you somehow find a way to get it off of him. Okay. I don't know how you do that, but we can talk about that on a future show. But I think you find some way to get it off of him, and then they rematch each other in a grudge match at WrestleMania, where there's no titles on the line, there's just pride.
I like the idea of them having a grudge match rematch if the title isn't involved in the match, but I don't see how Vince, with his current hard-on for Lesnar, does anything other than build somebody up to beat Lesnar at Mania. It just seems inevitable at this point.
Well, and, you know, the conventional wisdom right now is Reigns, but Reigns still has 6 months to either get injured or to do something that'll harm his character.
Well, they're walking a very fine line with harming his character right now because They're giving him the Super Cena push where no matter how much he gets beat down, he always comes back. No matter if they send two guys out against him, he always overcomes the odds. At some point, people are going to recognize that he's John Cena 2.0 and get sick of it.
Oh, that's already all over the internet. I mean, everybody's already tracking that. And my problem is again, if you put Reigns against Lesnar at WrestleMania, the outcome is guaranteed. There is no mystery in that match. There's no drama or suspense to be had there. You know Reigns is going to win. So I think they need to go a completely different way. You want to give Reigns his WrestleMania moment, fine. He can win the title at WrestleMania. I just don't think he should take it off of Lesnar.
Well, you've laid out a good case for it, but we've still got to get out of the hole we're in right now. And until we get through Night of Champions, there's no way we can get beyond this. We got to deal with the shit that's already booked.
Well, and is there any thought or guarantee at all that the October pay-per-view is going to be any better?
If they don't do anything differently than they're doing right now, it's definitely not, because if that's how they're going to build pay-per-views on Raw and SmackDown and Main Event and every other show they have, they got no chance. I mean, they're acting like they've got 700,000 people who are already paying $10 a month. They're acting like they don't have to try because they already have people paying for it and it's guaranteed.
Right, except for they really need over $1 million to make this thing profitable.
Well, apparently they don't anymore because they made a whole bunch of cuts this summer and slashed the budget for the production of new shows on the network. So everything they've done to save costs has fueled the rising price of the stock. So investors now believe that they're profitable even with 700,000.
Well, and that's a great short-term strategy, but here's the problem. Some of the cuts they made were in the writing room.
You know, I heard somebody say this earlier this week when I was listening to an old show from a few weeks ago that just sat in my iTunes library and never got around to, but he was proposing the idea that you film the creative writing meetings that they have for Raw and SmackDown and then air those on the network as like something for subscribers, an exclusive that you see behind the scenes. You get only on the network for $9.99 that you don't get anywhere else. And that was immediately shot down by somebody else on the line who said, you think they're going to put that kind of incompetence on television? And you can laugh at that line if you want to, but it's kind of true. Like, do you really want to show these inept writers who get fired every 2 weeks because they can't come up with anything?
Right. So, like I said, great short-term strategy to get the books cleared, but in the long term, you know, bad writing and bad product is going to take its toll.
And here's the really sad thing, Frank. I'm going to close it on this note, and you can respond to it any way you want. Impact Wrestling, which is in a tailspin and is going to be canceled off Spike TV, and if they get renewed, it'll be on a smaller network like Velocity that's in a half or a third of many homes as Spike. And they're doing the best shows they've ever done. Maybe because they've realized the writing's on the wall and they've got nothing left to lose at this point, but Impact Wrestling, week in, week out, is delivering a quality show, and Raw continues to be miserable.
Well, there is something to be said for this, okay? It's a very old saying. You should act every day like it's going to be your last. If they'd been thinking like they had nothing left to lose a year ago, they wouldn't even be in this position right now.
That's true. And maybe that's what Raw needs to do. Maybe they need to act like they're about to be canceled by USA Network, and these shows will get better.
Hey, I've said this for a long time. The biggest shortcoming that Vince has is that he has no competition. He turned out his best stuff when WCW was beating him.
Yeah, that's why the Monday Night War is a show on the network right now, because it's the glory days of when they were going head-to-head and had to one-up each other all the time.
And right now, he has no incentive to try hard.
Because TNA's like you said, not giving him the incentive. No.
Well, and like you said, he's got 700,000 guaranteed pay-per-view, but he's got $7 million in guaranteed pay-per-view revenue every month now.
Well, I'd say probably more like $3 million because he has to give a cut to different people. But yeah, it's
well, gross profit though.
Right, gross profit $7 million. I'll give you that.
So, you know, you people have already paid for this.
Yeah, I think it might have been Big D who said that very early on, that Vince isn't going to care because he's already got your money. And that's what we're seeing now.
And folks, we have us a genuine, iconic Angry Marks moment. And that is that me and Big D agree on something.
That means the show has to end here because we cannot get any further than that.